Hello everybody, and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Thank you for stopping by. This is a wine educational channel that I've designed to help those of you that want to know more about wine in great depth, or those of you studying the world of wine. And this series is more focused towards the latter. We are looking at what's called the Wines of the World, section D3 for the WSET Diploma, the level 4. And we're in the wonderful and exciting country of South Africa. So we are going to be looking here at series 5. So we're now getting really knee deep into the wine regions of South Africa, and series 5 is about the coastal region, and we're adding the Oliphant section onto this as well. So we've got a really multi-part series, as you can see here, 8 parts in this section, and that includes everything like Constantia, Durbanville, Stellenbosch, of course, and so on. Now parts 1, 2 and 3 are available as wonderful free content here on the world of YouTube, but parts 4 through to 8 will only be available on my exciting and very useful e-learning portal over at winewithjimmy.com. Let's rock and roll then, looking at the world of Constantia. First of all, let's talk about the coastal region that Constantia is a part of. So an introduction to the coastal region. Now, this region is on the western coast, mainly of the Western Cape, and it accounts for about 45% of the area under vine in the country of South Africa. However, it only produces in volume about 25%. And that tells you immediately that the yields are typically lower in the coastal region. And certainly when you look at the dry farm bush vines that you find in the Swartland, for example, of course, you're going to see much lower yields than in other zones. Many inexpensive wines that can be found across this region will be labeled as coastal region. That allows the producers of these wines to source grapes from a whole area, the whole area of the coastal region. The region also contains many important districts and wards. So we'll see the likes of Cape Town district, Darling, Franschhoek Valley, Paarl, Stellenbosch, and the Swartland. So lots of mightily important areas to talk through in this multi-part series. The Cape Town district then, let's talk about it. It was established in 2017, encompassing 4 wards, but 2 that we will focus on, Constantia and Durbanville. It had a predecessor, it was called the Cape Peninsula, but that was stopped when this came into place. So it's like a rebranding, a renaming of it. The new name is really one of better marketing, in the hope that it will make the connection between the vine growing area and, of course, the huge tourist trap of Cape Town. And it makes sense to call it the Cape Town district, of course. Now we're going to talk about Constantia as our first important ward within the Cape Town district. First of all, we have someone called Katharina Trinras, who you'll see up here, who had been farming in what we now today call the Constantia area for some time. And the farmstead's gable actually is listed as 1682. Her farm consists of about 12 morgen, that's about 25 acres of really good grainland and sufficient stock for her needs. So the reason why we include this is not necessarily for vine at this point, but the winery that's now there today, Steenberg, talks about her a lot, and their top wine is named after her, called Katharina, because of the origins of farming in this area. Shortly after that, we have the first emergence of vines. The first governor of the Cape, Simon van der Stel, pictured here on the left-hand side, builds a house and uses the land to produce wine as well as other fruits and vegetables, and of course for cattle farming. He names it Constantia. And by 1709, at least 7,000 vines have been established, many of which were imported from Germany and elsewhere. By 1712, Simon van der Stel passes away. Now, of course, this is important for Constantia in terms of him really starting the industry here. But look at the etymology. Simon and Simonsberg Mountain is named after him, and Stel for Stellenbosch is named after him as well. So important links to etymology just there. He dies in 1712, and his estate is broken up and sold in 3 parts, from Groot Constantia, Hoop op Constantia, and Bergvliet as well. 3 different parts today established. Now, we know, of course, there's something very important to talk about, because this is the home of Vin de Constance, a dried Muscat dessert wine today from Klein Constantia, produced since the 18th century with about a 120-year hiatus of production from 1866 to 1986. And that's because phylloxera kind of decimated it and nobody revived it after that point. Many mentions in literature. I did go through this in quite a lot of detail in the historical section, the historical series of South Africa. But Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility is published, where Mrs. Jennings recommends a little Constantia for its healing powers on a disappointed heart. Napoleon Bonaparte, whilst in exile, his final exile from 1815 to 1821 on the island of St. Helena, is said to drink Vin de Constance every day, and in fact was the last drink on his deathbed. Charles Baudelaire, who was a famous French poet, publishes the poem Le Frère de Mal, and he compares Constantia wine to his lover's lips. And then Charles Dickens begins work on his final and unfinished novel, which is The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and that talks of Constantia wine as well. 1986 was the first vintage released after 120 years of no production, and that heralded the new era for Vin de Constance wine. What about the location here of Constantia? So the vineyards are planted generally on east-facing slopes of the Constantia Berg that you see in the picture, and that's a mountain that extends from Table Mountain. The aspects will vary, though. It's majorly east, but you will have some north, some northeast, some southeast, and some south here. Elevations range from 50 meters, and that's Constantia Royale, up to about 340 meters, which is Klein Constantia. And there are others that get quite close to that altitude as well. The soil, the mountain is granitic, but with top layers of sandstone, Takulu sandstone, oak leaf, and Glen Rosa. Amazingly, not Table Mountain sandstone. And the very extreme conditions here, which is wind. There's a lot of wind that comes both from the north and the south, has caused a heavy amount of wind erosion, which has really exposed a lot of strata of geology. So you will find differing amounts of granitic and sandstone-based soils here. It's quite amazing. So your location. Now, here is Cape Town, here is Table Mountain, and this is the Constantia Berg that comes down here. I'm going to give you a few arrows here because it's a good idea just to get an idea. Here's False Bay. You get a southeasterly coming this way, and you'll sometimes get a northerly wind as well. Now, these are the winds that can be quite intensive. Now, False Bay is about 5 to 15 kilometers away, depending on where you are. Steenberg is the one that's 5 kilometers. That's right at the southern section of Constantia. And then Buitenverwachting is at 15 kilometers away as one of the most northerly. But both of those areas will experience breezes, specifically the southern area with the southeasterly that comes through here. Now, rainfall is relatively high at an average of about 1,000 millimeters, though this will vary across the board. Constantia Royale receives about 900 millimeters per year, whilst Eagle's Nest and Brütenverwachting reach about 1,200 millimeters per year, but it's roughly at an average of around 1,000. Now, there is moisture, there is humidity, there is rainfall here. So the biggest issue centers around disease pressure. Luckily, there are the winds that come along that can alleviate that a little. There is a notable absence here of Pinot Noir. It's a cooler location, but the very windy conditions mean that Pinot Noir really does struggle here quite significantly. The windy conditions can often cause arrested transpiration, where the vine shuts down, leading to the wines not ripening as well and heightened levels of acidity. So this is where you can get really high acidities. I know of some Viognier being grown by Constantia, and the TAs behind the Viognier of Constantia are in the 7s, nearly 8s, which are really high for Viognier, which make them exceptionally fresh to drink, which is absolutely wonderful. Okay, what about your grape varieties here? So Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah are your major 4, but there's a bit of Muscat grown here as well, as you'll know. As you can see, Sauvignon Blanc is the major cultivar, so therefore it's the most commercial grape, but also it is their kind of sense of identity of Constantia as well. So they're very proud of it. There are many different parts of Constantia. Though it's a small ward, you've got some elevation, some different geology, and then different areas in terms of wind impact and temperatures. So Sauvignon Blanc can range from being herbaceous and green, asparagus-y, nettle-y, green peppery, to more fruity and even more minerally expressions. It's quite complex. But of course, a major market for Sauvignon Blanc producers here is Cape Town. It's immediate, it's right next door, and people want fresh, easygoing wines. The businesses here, so there's only a small amount of producers, as I've already mentioned before, all focusing on quality production, but often with a side shoot of tourism and B&Bs. People can stay over in these wonderful locations. So they're really tapping into the local Cape Town market, where you've got a wonderful Constantia wine route. Very easy to go through this very quickly, can be done in a couple of days. And of course, you can stay there quite easily and enjoy a lot of great gastronomy and cuisine. Significant producers. Now, there are quite a few here. I've mentioned that one of the most southerly was Steenberg. One of the most wettest was Brütenverwachting. But then there's all the Constantias. So we have Klein Constantia, Groot Constantia. There's Eagle's Nest as well. We have Constantia Glen, Beau Constantia, Silver Mist, and Constantia Royale as well. So quite a few in this area. Really exciting place to get stuck into. Okay, now let's look at a Google Earth 3D video to really put this in perspective for you. It's a wonderful video that we've put together to give you an idea of how Constantia looks when you've got the topography, the oceans, Cape Town there. It's just going to be absolutely wonderful. So let's press play and let's have a look. Just a couple of minutes to look at this. Here we go. There is the whole of South Africa. We're going to go to the Western Cape. Of course, we're going to highlight that first of all. There you are. That's everywhere in the winelands pretty much. And we're going to go down to the far southwest, where we find, of course, the important city of Cape Town, with all that history behind it, good sort of 300-400 years. Cape Town is shadowed by the famous Table Mountain, which you can take hikes up, of course, with that flat top, hence why it's called Table Mountain. And on the other side of Table Mountain is where we're looking at, because we're going to look at, of course, the district of Constantia. And this is an important part. So there it is outlined in red, but we want to give you the topography to begin with. What is it that it is in the foothills of Of course, Constantia is in the foothills of the Constantia Berg, and that's what you see just here. This is what gives it some good protection against the big effects of the oceans here, and also aspect. You've got wonderful aspects, and of course, great geology comes from all of this as well, from the Table Mountain. Big windy area, remember, lots of wind erosion. Now we're going to quickly go through the main estates here. At the bottom is Steenberg, which is one of the rainiest, about 1,100 millimeters of rain on northeast facing. Then we've got Buitenverwachting, which is also quite wet. That has anywhere between 8 to 1,200 millimeters, next to Klein Constantia, which is at about 1,100 millimeters of rain, famous, of course, for the sweet wine Van de Constance. Next to that is Gruit Constantia, and then we have all those that nestled into the hills there. We have Eagle's Nest, famous for Syrah, amongst others, Constantia Glen, Beau Constantia, fantastic wines being made there. And you've got altitude coming into play with those collection. And Constantia Royale there at the end. This is one of the drier parts, heading more towards Cape Town, but quite a few, all nestled into that area, as you can see. I hope that gives you a good indication of this wetter, windier area. Remembering also that we don't find Pinot Noir here because it just struggles a little bit too much in the area which is Constantia. So gives you a good idea. I hope you've enjoyed that. And yes, wonderful Google 3D Earth video. And that's it for our Constantia ward. Now, please do join me for part 2 when we'll be looking at Durbanville, another ward within the Cape Town district. If you have any comments, questions or concerns, please do get in touch. You can do so by commenting on this video below. We'd love to hear about your experiences in South Africa, in Cape Town, in Constantia, any favorite wines that you may have. If you have any questions about the content that I've delivered, please pop them there as well. Make sure you click like and click subscribe. You can also use the social media at the bottom of every slide. And if you are in the wonderful green rolling hills of Old Blighty, that's the United Kingdom, come and say hi to me. Come for a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Bye.